we've gathered 5 panelists for you who have all done great investigations, have won many awards. If I need to mention their awards when I introduce them to you, we'll be here tomorrow morning. We don't want that. So I'll keep it short. I'll keep them short because we have 5 speakers on a panel and we want to give you plenty of time to ask questions afterwards. So I have a timer. My phone can be on. I'm asking all of you to put it on either airplane mode or at least have the sound, whatever you call it, off. I know a lot of ugly ringtones by now being on stage. We're going to talk, each of our panelists is going to talk for about 10 minutes. We will not take questions in between unless you have a very short, very pointed question. We will take plenty of questions afterwards. So enjoy this wonderful panel, enjoy these great speakers, because this is a host of experience in cross-border collaborations here. And we're going to hear from them where cross-border collaborations go. What do we have to think about when we take the next steps? Because we've all learned by now, cross-border collaboration is a treasure. And it's taken journalism far, and it will take us even farther. So we'll hear their experiences, and they are going to talk about the challenges. I asked them specifically. We're going to start with Laurent Richard, and you are executive editor of Forbidden Stories. I'm not going to read everything you've done, because it's way too long. But I want to hear your experiences. I want to hear your challenges. And there is a presentation on this talk. So go ahead.
Thank you. Is that, yeah, okay. So thank you for having me on this panel with good friends. And I will try to do my best by starting after the party yesterday with that challenges of having a mic, papers, and something for some slides I did prepare here. I don't know if you can show that on the screen. But yeah, no, a few words, and I know that I have now maybe 9 minutes and 40 seconds to make a presentation about, not of course about some impactful investigation what we did, but about the challenges and
I think
some
it's the
issues
next,
we might
the other one, by the
facing.
way.
It's not this one. It's
nope.
called Prez GIJC23, which is
that one. Yes. There
yeah. Thank you for that. Perfect.
Thank you.
So I'm Laurent, I'm the founder and the director of Forbidden Stories, and our mission is to continue the work of assassinated reporters, and we do that in a collaborative way, and that's about cross-border investigation. First, when Margot asked us to think about this panel and what to say on cross-border investigation, it might sound weird to start by that, but most of the time, honestly, we don't need, I think, cross-border, we don't need collaborative investigation. Every single investigation doesn't need a large consortium. That's really important to keep that in mind, even if it's a trend, even if it's, as we're going to talk about, extremely important for many issues, but sometimes collaboration as well can slow down your own processes. That's something really to take in consideration. It's not, it might as well be very difficult to keep the confidentiality of your investigation, so to keep your source very secure as well. So that's something that is important to consider before starting a collaboration. But to start a collaboration, as we all did here, I think we go through all the same kind of question. Why do we need to collaborate? I can share a bit of our experience at Forbidden Stories. We were not the first to run investigation after the killing of someone, or after the arrest of someone. Miranda was working for OCCRP, did work on the Khadija project. The Arizona project was the very first, I think, collaborative project in the history of journalism, and that was after the killing of Don Bolles in Arizona, and that was in 1976. In our cases, we collaborate and we do cross-border investigation because collaboration brings protection. When we start a project, journalists have been killed, the killer is still free. We don't know exactly what he or she was investigating, but we know how important it is to continue his work. And we do that for making sure that the people will get access to the information that people wanted to silence. That's crucial. So we're not doing any kind of advocacy here. We're not even defending press freedom directly, but we think that we can use journalism to defend journalism. because most of the journalists who have been killed all the time have been killed because they were publishing stories that are extremely relevant for the public opinion. Because, like Daphne Caruana Galizia, she was investigating money laundering, corruption in Malta. Jagendra Singh in India, he was investigating the sand mafia and illegal mining in India, and he was killed for that. So all those stories, all those cases are missing then for the public opinion. So that's our role, our duty to carry on that. But the way to do it is really to run some cross-border investigation. And that's also very key to, I know that we got used to listen on the radio in the morning, to read the newspapers that a new journalist have been killed somewhere, in Mexico, for instance. Another journalist have been arrested in the Philippines. And it sounds more and more, we get used to that. And that's really an issue that to be used to that kind of things. Because it's not only a catastrophe in Mexico, it's not only a Mexican cases, it's really a worldwide attempt against press freedom. And that journalist in Mexico might be investigating drug cartels who are operating everywhere. So that's also a French story, that's also an issue for all of us. So this is why we believe so much in cross-border investigation, because first we have collaboration is bringing protection. It doesn't make sense to kill reporters if you have 50 other reporters who are working on the same investigation. But collaboration is bringing resources as well. So we are splitting the work, as you know. So we are creating teams and sub-teams. Who is investigating the killing? Who will take that lead on this money laundering issue, on this corruption issue, on this human rights violation issue? So we are splitting the work, so we have much more resources. And at the end, the reader, or the people, the viewer who are watching the documentary, or the audience will benefit from that, because you have 80 person who will be fact-checking any single information, any single sentence in the story that you will read. So that's extremely important as well, I think, that kind of cross-border investigation to restore the trust between the public opinion and the news organization. We are definitely suffering from a lack of trust. And that kind of collaboration where we can show that there is no secret or private agenda behind our news organization is clearly very, very crucial for the trust between public opinion and ourselves. Of course, collaboration is bringing impact. You are creating a conversation, and by explaining what Regina Martinez was working on in Mexico, by continuing the work of Jagendra Singh or Rafael Moreno in Colombia, we are creating conversation about impunity, about illegal mining, about cyber surveillance as well. So, and so that's crucial as well to defend ourselves against some kind of slap action, some legal threat as well. It's way more difficult to sue someone when it's part of a consortium. So that's strategically speaking, it's very key to move that way together. Talking about, last word about, before talking about the challenges and some issues. And at 3 more minutes, so I'm gonna go directly to the challenges. I think what we are missing is the training. I think that definitely we need to teach collaborative journalism. It's very hard to, sometimes we are running late. And I think that collaborative journalism is a trend for the past 20 years. We have some pioneers with ICIJ, with OCCRP, and now we need all that. We need to teach collaborative journalism in the School of Journalism. That's a new paradigm, that's a new methodology, that's a new way of thinking, that's a new way to protect sources as well, so it's very important. Big challenges, ego issues. We need to avoid working with people who have too much ego. This is really a key thing about how to run successfully a collaboration, avoid big star in journalism. Definitely, this is something that we learn investigation after investigation, but that's key. If you're not ready to share your work, if you're not ready to be on stage with others to share the award, don't work with collaborative project. Another issue that's more on the personal side, but that's really key to address that, and I think sometimes it's really under addressed. There is a big risk when you do work on that kind of consortium. You do work with hundreds of journalists and you are receiving messaging all the time. The risk of burnout in that kind of journalism is really, really higher and very higher than other newsroom. This is something to address because you are doing an important mission and you think your mission is more important than ever, than even your private life, your family life, and there is a big risk, and I think that needs to be identified. Another thing as well, and that's a specific message to the editors, don't see collaboration only as a leak or scoop provider. That's really a problem, I think. Sometimes editors of the newsroom think that they only can join a collaboration only if there is the final document that usually you spend months or years to get. That's very important. Collaborative journalism is about investigating. It's not only about receiving a document and say, okay, I got my story. No, that's also about going onto the field. That's about building teams between field reporters and investigative journalists as well. So investigation is about that. We don't know exactly where we will end, but we know that there is a lead. We know that there are some evidences, and we know that there is a story that matters. Of course, and for the last minute, big thing to improve our digital safety. We know by having run the Pegasus project, we know how difficult it is for journalists to keep their investigation very confidential, and so their sources very protected. That's very key for us to partnering with Amnesty International Security Lab or Citizen Lab or other organization. They are the experts in that, and we need to. The world is changing very fast on the cyber surveillance, on the disinformation, the use of AI algorithm to destroy our reputation, to identify our sources is so high now. So we need to work with them. That's the end, and that was my last word. Thank you for that.
Thank you. Thank you very much for being. Give us one short hint. How do we curb those egos?
By investigating them before. Yeah, at some point we are investigative journalists, so we need to cross-check. And sometimes it's good to discuss between OCCRP, ICIJ, say, what do you think about that person? Do you think that will be good to work with him or her? And there is no blacklist, maybe, but it's good to know in advance.
Thank you very much. We're going to quickly move on to Miranda Petrucic. Who doesn't know her? You run, since this year, you run OCCRP. Yes. Yeah. And everybody's asking you, how's your job? So talk about your job, talk about the next steps that you're taking OCCRP to.
Well, thank you. Good morning, all, and thank you for being here this early hour. Well, I have to say, I was very lucky to be a journalist working in these big collaborations. The major collaborations like Panama Papers, like Pegasus Project, like Swiss Leaks, or Credit Suisse investigation we did. What was amazing about them, you as a journalist, you come and you suddenly have this wealth of data, and you feel like you're in a candy store, and you can just dig forever. I was also part of, smaller regional collaborations where, we tackle a topic, we tackle, stories like Rothenberg files that we did this year with a small group of newspapers. I've done, ad hoc collaborations. You have a breaking news just before, Russian invasion in Ukraine. In a month we produced, together with Guardian, with Der Spiegel, with a number of publications, Russian asset tracker, a massive undertaking within a very short period of time. But then also this kind of like help the partners collaborations. When a friend of us in Kyrgyzstan was arrested, we gathered the team the moment it happened and started investigating who was behind his arrest and published the story within 3 weeks. But now as an editor, I'm seeing also a different side of collaboration, which is I'm breathless at the moment because we have 4 collaborations coming out within a span of 6 weeks with a multitude of stories. And, I'm looking at our editorial thing and I'm thinking, God, how are we going to do it? If you guys haven't seen me here for a very long time, it's because I was editing. but it's a reality. So let's talk about the challenges. I think we live in, it's not, before it used to be, 1, 2, 3 collaborations a year. They get a lot of attention, a big impact, but now we are almost running them, every month. And, those are collaborations that need their attention, but how do we make them sustainable? So I'm actually going to talk about efficiency of collaborations. I think in today's time, what happens is, reporters get invited, and I was a reporter, I come as a, somebody in a candy store. So I would want to spend, months and months just digging into data, seeing what's around, thinking about. And then, there's a deadline, and a month before a publication, I'm like, and what's the story I'm going to get out of this, right? But what happens is, now as an editor, I'm like, well, some of my best journalists are in this team, but I really need them to work on these other 5 stories. And those other 5 stories are suffering because I've given my best people in a particular project. And am I going to get the best story from them, from this project? And, the other thing is, editorially, very often we don't have these conversations of what's the best story in the project. Sometimes we get, journalists in, they spend a lot of time, but then we are thinking, well, yes, this is a fascinating story for one country, but not as fascinating for my country, but I've spent the resources in it. So what is it that we can do? Where's my head now? I think there is a real need for us to have much bigger editorial conversations early on in the project. When we started, Rothenburg Files, our partner iStory said, I don't have more than a month to work on a project. That's what they said. We have a Russian war, we want to get the stories, but we do a month. We make them take 2 months. But that was it. That was all they were willing to put in. We ended up getting great stories. But what that meant is from the very beginning, we were 2 weeks. That's all you have to find the best leads. And then once we knew the leads, we were very focused on how do we get the story. And we were thinking about, which reporters need to go in which team and what is the reporting they need to do. Because I think in a lot of global collaborations, what happened, every newsroom is doing their own business. But as a team, we are not thinking, what is it that we want to produce? And I feel like that's one thing we can change and make the collaborations more efficient in a way that the editorial heads are discussing. What is the big story? Which chunk of work each of us can take and help so we don't all do, the work that reporters want to do and actually, might not be so great for the organization. And then, my other really big thing is, thinking about, not everybody has to be in a collaboration from the beginning, right? And I think what we don't do, we have learned the radical sharing in terms of the findings, but what we have not learned so well is radical sharing of the work we are doing outside the collaborations. And I think what we need to do is change the perspective and actually share the stories we're working on. And basically bring people and tell them, hey, here's our draft. We want to publish in a month. We want to do some extra reporting and publish in your own publication. And what it does, it basically helps, spread the story. It helps get the great stories to other, areas without actually reporter having to spend a lot of time digging themselves the same story that somebody else is doing. So that's all. That's my early morning efficiency talk from a standpoint of an editor-in-chief.
You have a little bit more time, so we're going to put a question to you. If you say, we have to do this, we have to talk, we have to start the conversation already at the beginning, so you do, like manage the expectations. That's what you're doing.
Yeah.
Can every editor do that? Do we need extra training to teach them that? And who's going to teach them? Where are we going to find our teachers in managing these projects?
So from talking to Amelia, I think GIJN is gonna take on a big task of taking time to train the editors. OCCRP has been training editors through doing but it's a very small scale. I do feel like what journalism community is missing is those really skilled, great editors who can actually tell, this is what we need, this is gonna push the story, this is what's not enough. And in a lot of project, editors come at the very end and they're like, well, this could have been different.
Better.
Because it's a lot.
Editors always make things better. Yeah.
Unless they're incompetent, but that's a different thing. Let's talk about competent editors. Yes. So I do agree. I think the editorial training is important. I think, the editors are the ones who really drive the standards. Also, editors are the ones who basically tell reporter it's not good enough. And I think sometimes editorially, we are not very good at telling the truth to the people. So what we'll do, oh, wonderful work, and then think behind us, this story is crap. It's a reality, right? And I think this is another conversation we need to have, because, this culture of let's just make it do is also, we mentioned burnout. Mm-hmm. It's not just a reporter burnout, it's also editorial burnout, because, that's what I'm feeling with my own organization and my own team. Mm-hmm. All I'm hearing in the past, 2 months, we will die, we cannot do this is too much, you need to kill. And I'm like, I cannot kill any of the projects. I can't tell everyone, well, sorry, you worked a year on this project, and now I'm going to pull out because we don't have editorial capacity to deal with this story. While everybody's saying, yes, we indeed don't. So a lot to, I think, to conclude, we live in a really amazing time. There's so many stories to choose for. There's so many stories to get involved in. But now we need to think how to be efficient and make sure that we can publish all the stories we want to publish with, the very focused resource use.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So we already have our news of the day. GIJN is going to start a leadership trajectory. So new leaders come over and talk to Amelia. Why you? You got your tram. You're here. Thank you so much. That's why it was a little bit late. There is also, like for your slides over there, the one on the table, it's real simple. Red is back, green is forward, and white is the pointer. And the floor is yours.
Thank you, Margot. Good morning, everyone. I'm sorry for being late. Still a bit jet lag because of the time difference.
But you could do that yourself. What newsroom you're running?
Oh, I'm from Tempo, but now I'm going to take you to a different story. We have heard from Lauren and Miranda, a big investigative collaboration network, Forbidden Stories and OCCRP. This one is a bit smaller, but it's something that several colleagues and I started 5 years ago. It's called Environmental Reporting Collective. It started at the Uncovering Asia conference in South Korea. Started as one story and then moved on until today. We have produced several stories. So the big question I want to discuss this morning is, how do we sustain this kind of collaborative initiative? After 5 years, of course there are challenges, there are burnouts, but how do we keep producing high quality reporting? How do we keep maintaining the network, moving beyond the personal relationships that used to be the first start of any collaboration? You have good friends and you trust your colleague, but then after several years, you move to a different kind of network. So the big questions in my head in the last several months was, how do we sustain it? So, but before that, let me just take you to several stories that we did. This is the first one that I mentioned that was released in September 2019. It's called Pangolin Papers. It's about pangolin, the smallest mammal that is heavily trafficked from Africa and Asia, mostly to China, because there's a huge demand for medicine, and other parts of the mammals are used for food and everything. And we managed to expose the underworld criminal network that smuggled the scales and the meat of this poor mammal to China. And then there's pandemic, of course. We were vacuum about 2 years, and then last year we did this story called Ocean Ink. It is about illegal fishing involving a dozen countries in Southeast Asia. So Indonesia, Malaysia, China, Philippines, Thailand, Vietnam, and we did zoom in to coastal villages where the fishermen are the one who suffer because of this illegal and unreported fishing. Then April this year, we released this story called Beneath the Sands. This is about the proliferation of sand mining in Asian countries that caused a lot of environmental damage. You can see this picture where a road was collapsed because of the nearby sand mining. And there's a big supply chain story behind the sand mining, and also criminal gangs, human rights abuses that also support this business. So those are the 3 stories that we did so far. As I said, it was started as one story, but then it developed into this network. This is several newsrooms that contributed to the project. The one on the above is the one that support the ocean story. You can see there's China Dialogue, Initium, Mongabai, Rage from Malaysia, Rappler from Philippines, Tansa from Japan, Tempo, my newsroom in Indonesia, and the reporter from Taiwan. In 1 year time, we managed to add several newsrooms. On the bottom, this is the one that helped us through the third story. You can see there's Ukalu from India, Science Africa, and then PCIJ, NBC from the US, Mekong Eye from Vietnam, The Continentalists from Singapore, and Central for Investigative Reporting from Sri Lanka. So those are the additional newsrooms. Then the question, of course, what happened throughout those years? What are the challenges? As I said, when you start an investigation as a collaboration, you rely mostly on your personal connection. You know the person that you work with, you know their work, you respect their work, you trust them. But then you have to move that kind of trust into the institutional level. How do you then make that becoming a newsroom collaboration, not only personal collaboration? So the success to transition that particular factor will decide how much time, budget that were allocated by this newsroom for the whole collaborative project. And then the other challenges is how do we then produce better story each time? How do we learn from our past mistake and keep the high standard, because you want to, producing better and better stories each time. And then you have to keep deliver that high quality to the newsroom is involved. Because if not, then what's the point? As Lauren said, if you join a collaboration, of course you expect to share the resources, share the story, and then get wider impact, get wider influence, get reaching new audience. But how do we then keep delivering that from story to story? And then, of course, maintaining that. So those are the big challenges, and I don't claim to have the answers to all of that challenges, but I will say that let's approach it not as one action. This is a process. This is a sequel. This is a sequence of actions. We have to keep trying, be creative, and you are not building this. You have to realize that you are not building this project for one story. You are in this for a long and hopefully sustainable time. By approaching this with that kind of mindset, it helps, trying to answer those challenges, because you are in it for the long run. So we try to do that by offering some unique values. Unlike other collaboration, we do have a core team, but it's very small, and we really rely on the newsrooms involved in the collaboration. Everything is radically shared, as in any of our collaboration projects across the world. And we don't want to compete with our newsroom, so we have to complement. We have to approach them what exactly they need in order to complete the story. If it's visual, data visualization, is it editing? Is it having one additional correspondent or reporters in several places in very remote place? So we try to customize what we offer to each newsroom, and then each newsroom is not obliged to publish the whole story. They can adapt to whatever fit to their local audience. So they can choose their local angle. They don't have to publish the big global angle. And we also give trainings and story grants and also do mini conferences. We hope to have our annual conferences in Bali every year. So this is the lesson learned. This is my last slide. Building a very strong core team is essential because they are the one who really work day to day, approaching newsrooms, building that network, that new network in that institutional level. They have to be very passionate and dedicated journalists. And have to keep delivering the benefits, of course, because that's how you keep a good project. You have to, bring benefit to all. Keep the work fun. This is very important. Sometimes burnout and stress can make it very depressing. And then you try to avoid meetings and everything. But no, you have to make it, try to, be flexible, but of course, professional and accountable at the same time. And creative. Don't afraid to make mistake. It is a process. And in that process, you will be making mistake, but you have to learn and then, make it better next time. This is the teams behind Environmental Reporting Collective. Our dear founder, Professor Ying Chan. She cannot make it this time, have several deadlines. We have Alex, and now the managing editor is Febriana Firdaus. You might see her around in this conference. And we have Ritu from India, Kang also our data editor. So that's it. Check our website. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. So there it is again, the word training and the word professionalizing. That's so important. You were the one who wrote me the sentence, "There's always a next story." I thought that was good. You're not in this for one story. There's a next story. Emilia, who doesn't know her? The new ED of GIJN. Welcome, and tell us what you think the next steps are going to be.
Well, okay, thank you. Well, and thanks for waking up so early and be with us. And it's a great honor to share this panel with them. I think we have all grown together working on collaborations. So I started, and my first collaborations were at a regional level when I was at IPIS Venezuela and then Armando.info, and trying to find answers to lack of access to data and fighting local realities. And that led us afterwards to work with ICIJ. And the project, my first project with ICIJ, was with 5 countries about illegal coltan mining. Those grew, then came offshore leaks, 100 journalists, and since then, well, you know the story. But we have more and more collaborations, more and more networks. And I will share a bit of some thoughts tied to the experiences from the local, regional, global collaborations I have the privilege and honor to have been part of. And something that when we think about is, yes, we're talking about collaborations and partnerships for reporting a lot. I do think there are different types of collaborations too, and that's something where we will move towards. We will have not only collaborations where we involve some newsrooms and tell the stories, but we will also have collaborations to find answers to problems that we have. For example, while dealing with millions of records or while dealing with complex security issues. And that is about, for instance, developing partnerships with academics, with computer scientists to find answers and understand AI, for instance. How do we use AI to help investigative reporting? That's something that we have already started to explore. Or if we're dealing with security issues, there are experts who know even more than us about security. So how do we tackle those? So I do think that those partnerships are going to be central and essential for us to continue thriving as an investigative journalism community. The collaborations are not only for global networks, and that's also something I wanted to highlight. So cross-border projects are not only projects with 100 journalists and with networks of 200, 300, 400, or hundreds of people. Collaborations can also happen between two journalists from two different countries, or two media organizations that can help each other. And even though we're talking here about crossing borders, I think that model also works in local realities. When we are facing many challenges, journalists in one country can partner and work together to advance collaborations. So we need to recognize that there's not only going to be one collaboration model, there are going to be multiple collaboration models, and we need to embrace that. We can also see collaborations among collaborators, so collaborations among networks, so that we advance and grow and understand where are we going next. So then, yes, we also have journalists in exile. And journalists in exile are also part of the collaborations. And we see that more often in investigative journalism. So we need to keep them also in mind. And we need to figure out what are the tools and techniques and how do we advance in our collaborations when we have members of our collaborations either going in exile, that happened to me while we were working in some of our projects, and then how do we continue and make those projects happen? Because the challenges are still there, the threats are still there. And that leads us to training. We are a few, I think, still, like even though we're talking about hundreds, we need thousands, I think, of investigative journalists who can collaborate. And that leads to training the new generations, training more editors, training more journalists who are capable of working on investigative collaborations. So that we have not only the same people, we could, like every network can go not only to one person, but to many people in different countries. So that we have powered networks and powered collaborations. And we have diversity in our collaborations too, in terms of how many people are we reaching, how many different stories we can tell. Because if it's only a small group of people, yes, we will all be burned out, and there won't be enough people for all the amount of stories that we will need to tell. And that leads me to talking about all the security issues too. So we need to, there are more sophisticated schemes, actors trying to delegitimize journalists, so we still need to embrace and celebrate each other and bring light to those issues, and also help each other to basically advance and give credibility to the work of all the organizations, all the media, all the journalists, small, big, independent, freelance, working for news outlets, working on the collaborations. There's also something that is happening. We have multiple possible stories, we have multiple projects, we have little time. Even though these stories could take like 1 year, months, the amount of stories that we have, are facing also a lot happening around the world. So we have journalists that while they're working on collaborations, they have elections going on. They have coups in their countries. They have suddenly big scandals, big local scandals that they need to jump on. And then it's like the editors need to go and say, oh, what do we put our time and invest our time on? So there are multiple agendas happening at the same time. Yes, we have our global collaborative agenda, but then there are the priorities that the audiences need locally, regionally, and globally. So we need to find answers to that lack of time and to that many things happening at the same time. And thereby we need not only hundreds, but thousands of journalists embracing the collaborative investigative journalism model. And that leads to the human factor. So it's understanding the power of people, the power of investigative journalists, and the power of working with each other and supporting each other. And the areas of growth to me is sustainability. So how can we make collaboration sustainable? Before we were just trying to convince people you need to collaborate. Now no one asks like, oh, why should we collaborate? We know we need to collaborate. But if it leads to burnout, what resources do we have? Then, yeah, we need to make it sustainable. And that makes it also not like going back to the types of collaboration. We also need to share resources like technologies, answers that we're finding, but also make it sustainable by embracing like different possibilities of collaborations and recognizing that not everyone needs to be everywhere. So we can actually have many collaborations happening at the same time. And then I still believe we're stronger together. So that would be, thank you.
you. So, one quick question, because we have a little bit of time left. If you say we have to make it sustainable, it's something that you also said, we will probably be talking about it. Do you have the beginning of an answer? How can we make this sustainable?
Well, yeah, I do think that, and I was addressing part of the answer in what I was presenting, is that we do need to train, and Laurent was mentioning, we do need to train more people, because the problem we have now is we have amazing investigative journalists who are amazing collaborators. And we see them working with Forbidden Stories, OCCRP, ICIJ, also regional networks that are fantastic, Arish, Clip, Connect Us, and so on. So they are all in all these projects.
Yeah.
And then, we need more people for all these projects.
And people
Sorry?
to run.
And efficiency. Yeah, no, but like also
people to run the projects as well.
You need good managers of those projects, understanding, well, what are the timelines that we need to have? Because collaborations are wonderful. Yes, you get more impact. You reduce the risks of security risks. You get further, otherwise one person alone wouldn't be able to find so many stories and connect the dots in such a way. But at the same time, yes, you need to have the capacity of managing and understanding, well, how are you working with your team? What timelines do you have? And then with collaborations, it's very powerful, but it usually takes 3 times the time it would take one person to do a story.
Yeah.
So, and then it's recognizing that and including that as part of the schedule too. And then if you have more people and you have good managers, good communication, then I think you can advance in making this sustainable. Also, well, resources, how are we sharing resources? Yeah. I do think we're going to do more data collaborations too. When we started all these projects, there were only a couple of organizations with data teams. Nowadays, most organizations have data teams. And those are different type of collaborations that I think are going to grow to internally as part of the reporting processes for the collaborations. But it's finding the answers to and it's working together to have more people also being capable of working on those projects so that you have good management, good editorial processes. So we will help with the training. Yes.
Yes.
We have the idea for that. Yes. But besides that with more people, more resources, coordination, good management, and editorial processes.
I see a new GIJN guide coming up. Project management. Yeah.
I think so. Yeah.
Why not? We have guides on, lots of really good tools and techniques, but leading a team.
Yeah. No, and
so,
building processes.
Just throw it in the hat.
Yeah. Thank you.
Finally, we go to Frederick. You can take us one step further. What is after now that we've identified we need a guide and we need a leadership program? Where do we go?
Well, first of all, it's an honor and pleasure to be on such a cool all-star friends panel. But there's also this huge disadvantage to be the last one in such a lineup, because I feel I have not much to add because it was already said. But I think I tried to sum up what we've heard, and I think it's all about sustainability. I think that we are currently entering a new phase of collaborative journalism. Like when some of in this room, like met, for example, in Lillehammer some years ago, I think I had less gray here, and we worked secretively on a project that was later to become the Panama Papers. This was still something new. There was some projects already. OCCRP and ICIJ were leading this path, but it was not on this global scale, like 400 reporters around the world working on a secretive projects. Now this is the new normal. There is, I don't know, want to know, or I would like to know, but I will never learn how many collaborative projects were born here on this conference, or were worked on shortly before publication. There was one publication today in the morning with OCCRP and The Guardian and many others revealing the secretive artworks of Roman Abramovich. But I think that it will be dozens. But this also comes for a price. I think we all know, we are here. This is a gathering of investigative journalists who already have done it, who have learned it. But it's also like a gathering of people of the next generation. Here there's many, and I guess I can speak for most of us here on this panel, and I don't want to sound old, but I think we had to learn it. We come from an environment where this like lonely wolf attitude in investigative journalism was still common in newsrooms. Now you see like in the audience and also like on all those panels, there's a new generation who have never been in this lonely wolf environment. They learned from the peak on like to work together. But I think to like make this model sustainable, to make it bulletproof, we also like have to adopt. I think we face new challenges. Of course, there's slaps. I mean, I've spoken to so many like journalists in this conference who are telling me like, I don't have the time for collaborations. I have to fight in court. I have to prepare them. That costs a lot of money, of time and resources. Also there's like many like new networks, new organizations popping up. We also have to face the fact that the environment that we are working on is still very harsh when it comes to finances. I mean, during this conference I have heard from, in the German-speaking world alone, 2 big media houses having cost cuts where dozens of reporters have to go. And this makes me like feel like, hey, we have to adopt very fast now. And where can we start? I mean, Laura mentioned the price that we pay like on the burnout side. I think this is something that we have to like bring into our newsrooms as well, like speaking about it. Let's speak about communication rules. I love Signal, but I hate Signal. So it's like, it's amazing to collaborate, but it's a pain if you want to relax and if you have to relax, if you want to like relax and recover your body. It's great to see so many like journalists in the morning here, by the way, running outside, because that also like tells you like, this is also like starting. We have to speak in our teams like, what are you doing to recover of this very stressful work? Is it sports? Is it family? Is it going to party? But we have to communicate it. We also have to communicate more, in my opinion, about family life. It's great to see more and more attendants on this conference being here with their children. Because I think like 10 years ago, this was something most of us didn't talk about. We were the like professional faces, like, hey, we are super cool in journalism, but we didn't talk about our families at home, that we want to go home to our children, to our partners, to our parents we have to take care of. And let's speak about this stuff, because that's something that we all have to struggle and that we all have to find a way like managing those things. And we have to be more on. This should be something that we have to bring like into our newsrooms, those discussions to fight burnout. Then I think that's where Miranda was with the point efficiency. Yes, we have to become by far more efficient. I think we are already very good when it comes to like radical sharing of information. But I think to like keep this model ongoing and sustainable, I think we have to like do more radical sharing when it comes to simple stuff like artwork. If all outlets do their own artwork, hey, that's a lot of time, a lot of resources. Let's do it together. And many outlets are doing and are leading by example already. Also, we need the fact-checking teams working together. So far in many investigations, I see like reporters working very closely, but when you come like close to publication, the fact-checking is done in all different outlets, but the fact-checking teams are not communicating with each other. We can be by far more efficient if we get them on one group as well, like because they always ask the same questions. That's how fact-checkers tick. We also have like our lawyers to speak more. I'm really glad to see that in many collaborations, we see it already that lawyers from English-speaking outlets is jumping on a call with the lawyers or Forbidden Stories, ICAJ, USCCRP, Irish, or other groups to speak about different attitudes, because that's something where we can learn of. I mean, we all know that lawyers are expensive, so let's team them up. I mean, they will hate us, at least for a moment, because it's like the bill is getting a little bit smaller, but we need to work on this. We also have to communicate more among the networks. It's sometimes really hard to see. In some weeks, you see like OCCRP publishing something, ICAJ, Irish, Forbidden Stories, and like, hey, we're cannibalizing each other. It's like we have to speak and coordinate a little bit and give us a warning. Hey, in this week, we are going to come out with a story. We don't have to tell them what it's about. maybe it would be good, like, is it about journalists, killed journalists, unfortunately? Is it about an environmental story, corruption story? I think we can trust each other that far. And we must trust each other, because that's also like burning of resources if we publish too close to each other, because we are stealing our audience. And then also, like, as most of you here are representing like the bigger organizations, I think we also have to think about sustainable models for smaller outlets, how to keep them like contributing. And I think that also means what was addressed here on this panel, like speaking more with editors. What is the advantage? But also, like, how can we get them involved in more? It's like, if one of these outlets is involving a small newspaper, of course there's normally this close job of like those 2 or 3 investigative journalists who know how collaborations work, but we need the beat reporters in. We need them in, and they don't have to be on all those projects, but if there's a cyber project, get the cyber beat reporter in. If there's an environmental project, get the environmental reporter in. But that also means we have to teach them. We have to tell them. I mean, I don't know how often I discussed with editors, like, do we need the second and the third name in the byline? Yes, it's the colleague from, let's say, Indonesia. He contributed a lot. He like pushed the story. So we have to put him there. And I hate those discussions. We have to get rid of those discussions. We have to tell editors and teach editors why we have to focus on the topics, on the investigations, and not this bullshit stuff about giving credit. Because giving credit should be something like, hey, we have learned it, we know why, and I don't see any like disadvantage of giving credit to a team. And there's also like something that I've like seen from personal experience. I think we also have to appreciate partners, especially when it's like smaller partners who contribute, for example, data sources to projects. Because if you get the feeling, and especially if your editors get the feeling, that you're only contributing, you're getting a lot from the networks, but not from the other members, that as soon as they have a cool story, they go with your competitor. That is discouraging editors, like to assign resources on those projects. This is something that we always have to keep in mind. If we want to grow this, like keep this model ongoing, we have to like say thank you in a nice way and remember with whom we worked in the past and what we deserved, what we got out of those collaborations. And I also think we have to work on models, not only to do non-profit. I know that unfortunately we are living in a world where investigative journalism relies a lot on donations. But I think we also have to speak more about ways and try out new models, how to, I don't want to say earn money, but get break even. How to finance our teams, not only with the money of donors, because we have seen during COVID how quick it can be like that their money is going down. So I think we will always have to rely in parts on donations, and I'm super thankful that there's so many foundations and donors out there who believe in the power of journalism and the need for a healthy democracy, why we need the journalism. But I think we also have to work on new models, because otherwise we will not survive, and we will not sit here and be happy about us at least contributing a little bit for a better world. Thank you.
Thank you.